Action.
Action. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. We live?
We are live.
Okay,
At least
good.
it says live.
First of all, there's always whenever something good happens, there are always some challenges. The weather changed, it rained, and of course, here in LA, when it rains, people run for shelter. We're always afraid. So thank you for coming out on this cold winter night. But we need the rain. We need the rain. I just want to my name's Rabbi Yonah Bookstein, the rabbi here at Pico Shul. But today I'm wearing a different yarmulke as the organizer of something we're calling the Pico Robertson Health and Safety Coalition. I've been really concerned about these issues of health and safety in our neighborhood, and it started with other things. And then right now it's really what I'm concerned about and what we're talking about tonight is the oil wells across the street. If you're open to it, I'm just curious if you just raise your hand and just say like your name and if you belong to a synagogue or an organization around. Anybody want to say? Yes.
Happy Minyan.
What's your name, sir?
Aaron Biston.
Aaron, welcome. Well, happy Minyan.
I've been living here 20 years.
Live here 20 years. Great. Anybody else?
23, yeah.
23. Anybody else? Yes.
Bathsheba Frankel. I'm mostly Pico Shul.
Pico Shul, welcome. Yes.
I'm Miriam Duman Goldberg. I go to B'nai David, Judea.
Miriam from B'nai David, thank you. Yes.
Tova Abadi, I go to Happy Minyan.
Tova from Happy Minyan, great.
Shabsi
Shabsi.
Katz from Link, the Happy Minyan, and of course the Pico Show.
Thank you, Shabsi. Thank you. Get around. Yes. Yes.
Matt Lefferman from B'nai David and other esteemed organizations. In the community.
Wonderful, wonderful. Sir.
Emmanuel Cates, Westside Shul, Young Israel Century City.
Fabulous, fabulous. Great. Anybody else? Yes.
Jay Summers, Anshe.
Jay from Anshe. Great. Okay, well, thank you all for coming tonight. I have written this out so that you know exactly what we're getting into. And we're going to get through all of this tonight, please God. So, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? We have better things to do, right? We've got Netflix to binge on. And so you know the old saying, see something, say something, right? That's what we're saying now, right? So here it's a case of smell something, say something, right? And that's why I had on the other side 1-800-CUT-SMOG, and I'll explain what that is towards the end. We have a lot of stuff to cover, so I'm going to try to cover a lot of material. Will be time for questions at the end, and all of this is being recorded, so if you wanted to go back over something or you want to share it, it will be on our Facebook page. Los Angeles is the largest urban oil field in the United States. Come in. The largest in the United States. We sit on the biggest oil field as a city, right? There are other oil fields, but no city of this size on an oil field except in LA. And there's 10 million people in LA County, and LA County is full of oil, but Pico has the largest single, actually, this West LA Pico oil field is the biggest. In some cases, oil, as we know, is being drilled very close to sensitive things like schools and homes and churches, synagogues, parks, playgrounds, hospitals. There are those kind of places are called sensitive areas where air pollution is more regulated by, in theory, by the authorities. It is important to note that many active wells in Los Angeles are actually not in affluent areas like ours, but are in much lower income areas. In fact, the worst polluters of LA are not in nice neighborhoods like ours. They're in areas with considerable lower incomes, and they're also called environmental justice neighborhoods, as identified by the California Environmental Protection Agency. What happened? In 1966, that tower, the original tower was built there by Occidental Petroleum, and it was lauded as the first architecturally designed oil derrick in the city. The mayor was at the ribbon cutting ceremony to launch this new site. And then they drilled a lot of wells. 1998, Occidental sold it to Brightburn. They didn't say why, but usually Brightburn, a newly formed company, they specialize in buying aging wells and ramping up oil production at those wells with new technologies. Brightburn quickly set about reconfiguring this site to increase production. And that's when the neighborhood and other people started to really get involved in the issue. Now, despite heavy criticism and a newly formed organization called NAYS, Neighbors for a Safe Environment, okay? Despite that, and NAYS had to sue eventually this company here, Brightburn. After 2 years of legal and political wrangling, there was a settlement. What happened? Brightburn wanted to expand drilling and not just drill during some hours, they wanted to drill 24/7 whenever they wanted. And there were lots of noise complaints and odor complaints that the city had received. The lawsuit, though, dragged on. And NAYS, who was a bunch of people like us, were just trying to help the community, they couldn't continue the fight any longer because it was costing so much money in court. So they agreed to a settlement in 2001 after these political wrangling. And the settlement was with three parties: the city, Brightburn, and this organization, NAYS. NAYS still exists. Ray Dresden and Richard Wiener, who couldn't be here tonight, represent that organization. And it allowed for expanded oil drilling under certain conditions. We're not going to go into all of them, but I'll name a few of the conditions. Brightburn replaced a diesel rig, right? They had to power the pumps somehow in the facility. They used to use a diesel one, they put in an electric one. They extended the height of the towers and the thickness of the walls from 12 feet to 25 feet. And there are 70 other provisions in this lengthy agreement. One of them, which I just learned about, is that there was supposed to be a 24-hour complaint line at the Department of Building and Safety if anybody should have any concerns. Now, if you pick up the phone today or you look online to try to find that 24-hour, don't waste your time. It doesn't exist. Now, it should be noted that the same protections which NAYS was able to get for our neighborhood here did not extend anywhere else, right? So the sites in other parts of the city were totally unaffected, and so other companies who had other sites around the city were not under any new regulation or new supervision whatsoever. Only this site, and the only reason was because it happened to be in a site with people with the means to fight it. Now, Brightburn, for all their good technologies, went bankrupt. And they reformulated and they became Pacific Coast Energy Corporation. Now, part of the settlement was they had to do 5-year reviews, starting with when the settlement happened, and then every 5 years. The last review was conducted in 2005. So that means that nobody from the city has done a review of the operations across the street in a decade. And I will explain why that's significant. Additionally, there was supposed to be certain kinds of testing and monitoring as part of this to ensure that they were compliant. And the only time it was conducted in 2005, it was a very substandard, test, and wouldn't pass muster today as a environmental test. It's not an environmental impact statement because that's when you're doing like a new construction or something new. This was a environmental review, we'll call it. Now the current situation, we don't know if the new owners, what their story is. It changed hands again in September. Now, yeah, just 2 months ago. It's keeping the same name, but we don't know if it's going to change how they do business over there. Now, usually when things change hands, it's not because the company that was operating it loved the operation, right? So there's something. It would seem that would attract more attention. Now, what are the health and safety risks to our community? These are very difficult to know, right? Because there's not been any study done. We don't know what's being released, when, and so forth. But let me just say what the potentials are. Whenever you have oil and gas drilling, you have the potential for the release of benzene, volatile organic compounds, petroleum, and exposure to these things is not good. Right? And the more exposure you have to these things, the worse it is. And those who are more vulnerable, like the elderly and kids, their exposure is magnified because of their vulnerability. What is associated with exposure or prolonged exposure to these things? Potential, right? Again, I'm not, because I don't want to be sued saying, you said something. No, these are potential because we don't have the studies to know. However, other studies have shown that if you have lengthy exposure to these kind of things, there's increased risk of premature birth, headaches, nosebleeds, in extreme cases, cancer, miscarriage, and birth defects. I'm not saying it's happening because we don't have monitoring, we don't have a health survey, but we have to understand what we're dealing with. What are potential impact? Now, I called tonight's meeting specifically because we have discovered a whole host of violations. Okay? A whole host of violations. We can't get into the details of them, but I'll tell you every single one that I know of. Now, the first one I mentioned, which was no reviews. But that's not an actionable violation as far as the city can't give them a ticket for that. But the city is responsible, and in theory, somebody could sue and say, you aren't in compliance with your agreement, right? You made a settlement, and you promised to do this. You didn't do it. You're in violation. So they're in violation for a decade of their agreement with the city and NACE. Now, the first proven violation is that all projects of any significance at this drill site that add new equipment, okay, if you add new equipment, that needs approval from the zoning administrator of Los Angeles. Now, we happen to have met with the interim director of the zoning administration. Fortunately, it happened to be an hour before I learned that they were in violation of this. So we couldn't bring it up at the meeting. The next thing is, so what did they do? They put in 5 micro turbines. Each one is 200 kilowatts, producing 1 megawatt of electricity there. These are the first electrical generators that were ever put on that site. And they were put there between 2017 and 2019. Why do we even know about that? Like, how did I find out? There's a professor by the name of Salman at UCLA who's gotten very involved in this issue. And he knows where to look for records. Basically what happens is this. You've got a situation where the oil companies always want to be in the clear with the state authority, which is DOGGRs. It's called DOGGRs, D-O-G-G-R. That's the Department of Oil and Gas. Okay, that they are, in theory, they supervise all oil and gas in the state. So anytime these guys wanted to do something, they file some kind of document,
Application.
an application, a document, or we did this kind of a thing with Dogers. Guess who Dogers doesn't talk to? The zoning administration, right? They don't. They're in Sacramento or wherever. Actually, they're not. They have offices all over, but right. Okay. So this professor dug around and he found that they installed these things, and Dogers had no problem with that, but Dogers had no idea that the settlement agreement forbid this. Next, the second one is there's another clause that they violated, which was it explicitly states in their agreement they're not allowed to put generators there. Okay? No generators. Now, why no generators? We could come up with ideas, maybe for pollution, right? Anytime you're generating electricity, there's additional trans pollution. Or maybe it's for safety. Maybe there's something intrinsically dangerous about having a generator next to petroleum. I don't know. I'm a rabbi. But the agreement says no generators. And guess what? They have 5 of them now next door. Third, on October 23rd, 2018, the Los Angeles Fire Department made a site inspection. So in LA, oversight over these kind of things is a total mess. There's no really good oversight, which as you continue to see. But the fire department, they're good. They go out every year and they check every single site in LA. Every site. They don't necessarily tell anybody, right? They didn't tell the zoning administrator. They didn't tell the city councilman. They didn't tell the neighbors. They didn't tell Dogers. They didn't tell the Air Quality Management District. But they found violations across the street. You know what they found? They found, and I have the document here if you want to see it. You are hereby ordered to remove waste petroleum refuge from the surface and the ground around near the oil wells, the derrick pumps, the cellar tank, the oil pump, and combustible structure. Okay, they found that the site across the street had very subpar maintenance. And there was oil all over the place, which is in direct violation of many laws. In addition to the fire safety problem, it's against the law to have just petroleum hanging out exposed to the air. It violates the law. And it's probably one of the things that I was smelling in my office upstairs. And I would smell this stuff and I'd be like, isn't it supposed to be in the ground and in pipes? Why am I smelling it? Fast forward a couple months ago, I actually got to walk inside there. The door was open. I walked in. I said, hello, anybody in there? You might have seen my email about it. The stench in there was horrible. It was like, my worst thought about what it would smell like to work in a refinery or something like that. It was just this overpowering oil and chemical smell. So that's the fire department safety violation. Okay? That's the third proven violation across the street. Now there are 2 or 3 more possible violations, and I'll go through them really quickly. There's something called a workover. After a drill site has been used for a long time, it starts being less effective, less efficient, I should say. You have a water filter. Anybody use water filters at home? Right? After a while, you know how the water slows and you know it's time to change?
Sediment.
Exactly. The same thing happens with drill sites. So you're drilling for 10 years. The bottom of the drill site is this tube that's porous that lets in the oil and the gas, right? But they don't want to suck up all the sand, right? So they have this, filter kind of structure at the bottom. But after a while, they have to clean it. Well, if you want to clean it, it's expensive, and you have to file a permit with Dogers. So they did that. But they didn't tell anybody else that they were doing any work at the site, which they're supposed to do. And we don't know if that process released anything to the environment. It could have. But they didn't follow their orders. Next, the sixth possible violation is that, the fifth possible violation, I skipped one, is they pulled do-over permits for 2 other wells. So now you have all these workover permits that were done without any city involvement whatsoever. The state knew about it, the state gave them a permit to do it, the Dogers, but nobody in LA knew anything about this. And certainly not the neighbors like us. Lastly, and again, I think it is a violation, but we're going to call it probable or possible, would be the odors that I and many other people have smelled from this site. If everything's going right, we should not smell anything, which doesn't, by the way, mean that we aren't still being exposed to poisons, because some of these things are not
Odorless.
Some of them are odorless, thank you, Aaron. Some of these things are odorless, some of them have odors. So maybe it was from petroleum spills there, maybe it was from other things, we don't know. So it's a very complicated issue, as you can see, with many different parts. The city is totally unorganized in the matter. There's the zoning, and I'm not putting blame on the city. It is I'm just trying to describe the situation, right? I'll tell you where there may be blame, but hold on. Okay. Ready? There's a zoning administrator. They control what goes on in different places. They're the ones who really should be the most around. There's the planning department, right? They provide permits to do certain things in certain parts of the city. Aaron, I know you're real estate. You've been down to the planning department before, right?
I have so much to tell you after you.
Okay, right. So, but these city departments, they're big and they're complicated and they take a long time to do anything. Okay. Next, there's the fire department, right? There's another organization, Air Quality Management District. I mentioned that one. There's building health and safety, right? Building health and safety. They oversee commercial buildings in the city, right? And I'm sure there's even others.
City planners.
City planners, right?
City zoners.
Now, there's no annual inspections. There's no 5-year inspections. There are no inspections done by anybody who's qualified to inspect these sites, this site and the others. There's no 24/7 emission testing, which could be done. In other words, it could be. They have these very new, it's called fence line, lasers, and they can literally monitor in real time the air quality at these kind of places. None of that technology has been installed. Recently, there was a lot of progress made on the Rancho Park site. Because they found it in such serious violation of the law that they had no choice but to really shape up their act, and they have. The only reason that anything changed at Rancho Park, anybody want to guess?
Public outcry.
What, Charlie?
Public outcry.
Public,
Outcry.
there we go, public outcry.
Where in Rancho Park?
Rancho Park, the back of the park,
On the back.
covered by trees.
Has park? Oh, I never saw it.
I know,
Okay.
I didn't either.
What about the one in Beverly Hills High School?
We can talk about that at the
That
end.
goes down.
Now, why do I bring this up is because the only reason that anything happens in LA on this subject matter, where there's been any progress on any of the oil drilling sites around town, is from public pressure. It's the only reason. Unfortunately, we cannot depend on the city to make it their priority, so we have to make it the city's priority, okay? Now, dear Paul Koritz, our city councilman, sat here in the room. We had a meeting with him about a month ago. It was a very nice meeting, cordial meeting. He told us it was very important to him. The only way, though, to make him keep his promise that it's important to him is if we keep up enormous pressure on him. And there was, in 2018, there was an inspection motion put forward in front of the city council. Herb Wesson put forward this thing that every oil facility in the city should be annually inspected. Doesn't that seem like a no-brainer?
Yeah.
No-brainer, right? Who could be in opposition to that? It didn't even go to a vote. It just stalled. Because it has to go to this committee and this committee, this committee. Nothing happened. Right now, there's another motion in front, putting a buffer zone, a 2,500 foot buffer zone. And there was a report done. We met with the person who did the report, Udwak Joe Natuk. Udwak, very nice guy. I met him at APAC. He's a guy. He's a nice guy. His report, though, could have needed some work. For example, the report that he prepared on oil drilling in LA did not include the impact to health of the citizens of LA. It only included what the impact would be to the oil and gas industry.
Who was he hired by?
He works for the city. Udwak, he was the city oil administrator until a few weeks ago, when he now is the new job as he's now in charge of Dogers.
Oh my God.
Yes, he just got promoted. He's now in charge of the state oil and gas industry. And the new Erica, I think her name was Erica, who was here too at Pico Shul. She's the incoming head of oil in LA. Now, by the way, again, I could speak about this for like days. Do you know that in 1970 something, the guy who was the oil, we'll call him commissioner of the city, he had the job for a while. He would go every site. He wasn't an environmentalist. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't in real estate. He was an oil and gas guy. But he would go to every single site just to check on them. That was his job. When he left the job out of frustration, they never replaced him. The city had no oil and gas administrator until 4 years ago because of public.
No outcry.
That's right. In other words, what happened was when the professor and other people in the newspaper started publishing articles, they said, "Where's this position?" Didn't happen. So Paul Koritz, to his credit, helped to get the position reestablished. It was a line item. It was there. Just nobody had done it.
So from when did he?
What's that?
When did he quit? That's
He quit. He was 30. He was in the 70s, early 70s, sometime in the 70s. There was a guy. Wait, I should say when he quit. It's not true. They had a guy who worked for Parks and Recreation, who went around a little bit for like part time. He did it a little bit. He was from Parks and Recreation, and then there was nobody. I don't have the exact years. Okay.
He made a comment.
One sec. Well, one sec. I want to get through my material.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. I apologize. So, ladies and gentlemen, that on 1 foot, okay, is the state of oil drilling in Pico. And we're going to do some other things, but I wanted to take a moment, though, to introduce a person who's been helping me and encouraging me, and hopefully encourage you, who lives in the community, Dr. Lefferman. Share a few words.
Thank you, Rabbi. I feel like, hearing all those details, I feel like I've seen this movie once before. I just don't know how a sequel of Aaron Brockovich with Rabbi Yonah will sell to the greater Hollywood community.
I'll dye my beard blonde.
But maybe picking up on that theme, someone like Aaron Brockovich is someone who obviously would help here, and part of the goal in bringing everyone together is to pool our resources. Who do we know? Who can we reach out to? Let's think together. Many heads are better than one. As good as Rabbi Yonah is, and the amount of time and energy and the research that he's done is truly remarkable, and that he's taken, as he said, his rabbi yarmulke off and put on his environmentalist, and that sort of yarmulke is really refreshing. I think one of the reasons I'm drawn to this cause for several reasons. I have 3 kids who are still at home. We've lived in the area about 16 years. And obviously the environmental and health impact, I'm a physician as well, is something that's very concerning to me. But I think I really see this issue, there's a lot of divisiveness in the Jewish community. And I think in particular, this is a topic, an issue that we can all come together. We heard that there are people from several different shuls. There should be 10 different shuls here all coming together and working on this issue. So for myself, I think in particular, when we can do that, that's when we'll really gain momentum, and we will be, successful, and we'll be a Kiddush Hashem to to solve this issue with everyone together. So, this is a lot of details that you've heard, but I think the next step will be to come up with some real action items. Change can be slow, but I think we should all work together and hear from all of you what steps you think maybe we should take, or steps that you're willing. How are you willing to jump in? And I'm here as a kind of community representative to help to spearhead that support. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. All right, next steps. We'd like we really like to create 3 action groups that we see as immediately needed. One is an organizing team, and that would be the team, some people who want to help to organize meetings, to make the connections with other synagogues and other communities, so we can have a meeting, let's say, in a month with more people, new people, or maybe we'll have it in their synagogue or in their school. That is also possible. We want to do a strategic group. A strategic group is going to help to give the group the coalition strategy. What is our strategy moving forward? Right now, we are benefiting from enormous hashgacha pratis. Okay, I can't emphasize this more. That is divine providence. I had this thought leading up to Rosh Hashanah in September, and I just said, you know what? I'm looking over the year. I said, the one thing I said I was going to do and I never did is I never wrote to anybody about those darn oil wells across the street. And I sat down, it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I started working this really long letter, and I went through it 20 times, like 1, 2 in the morning. I finally finished, and I sent one to Udwak Joe, and I sent one to Paul Koretz and their teams. The timing was good. It seemed that the same time I was doing my thing, the LA Times was doing their research, and they had started researching an article. The professor at UCLA had discovered all this new information, and he was getting that information out to people, and so it was really beshared that we got meetings right away with people. We got the LA Times, the Jewish Journal article. Thank you to Lisa Klug and the Jewish Journal for publishing that. That really, all of a sudden, we lit a fire. But we need a strategy group to help us go forward. And next, another idea, again, is somebody who's interested in working on the environmental side of this. In other words, what are the health and safety impact of this particular site? We don't know. There might be somebody interested in that. There might be other next steps that we should take. And I'm going to open it up for a couple of... one more thing about the strategic group. We're going to do a power analysis. We're going to try to figure out how we can leverage our collective power and how do we influence power. And there might be others. If somebody, I didn't put it down, but if somebody's really into PR or something like that and writing press releases, I'm sure that would be helpful as well. I'm going to open it up for like 2 or 3 questions. It's now 8:51. 2 or 3 questions, and then please let me know if you're willing to be on any of these groups. We'll start in the back. Yes?
I just wanted to ask what the total of the money that is netted from the oil drilling.
Oh, what's the amount of money? We do not know. We do not know how much money. I do know that they do report something. They have to pay taxes. I just don't know. It's just we see. I don't know. Oh, they pay taxes on the oil they sell. They don't pay tax on the oil they pump. What do I mean? The city receives no revenue, even though this is, in theory, belongs, right? There's no revenue, there's no tax on them pumping there's no barrel tax. You might, and unfortunately there was somebody who was going to come tonight that didn't make it. Anybody here get checks in the mail?
My landlord does.
Your landlord does? Anybody else get checks? Checks? Okay. So the company has to send out these checks because they're pumping oil from under your house. Yeah. Yeah. Now these checks have been going down, I believe, as right. The less and less and less.
100 about $52 a month,
Right. Does that mean that
last 5 years.
that there's less oil, or is it the price of gas? Don't know. But I will say one thing. Somebody told me that a check bounced. And I think that's because that the company's changed hands. So careful for that one. Okay, next question. Shira.
Has there, in any of the like checks and balances that don't really exist but are supposed to exist, is testing the water in the
Water.
area a part of it?
Water. I'm writing these down. So the money they make. Okay. So when they pump up water from 8,000 feet under the ground, it's briny, non-potable water. So there's no drinking water directly under us, which is a good thing, because what they do with that briny water after they take out the oil and gas from it is they have other wells, which are called injection wells, which are subject to different regulations, and then they inject it back into the ground 8,000 feet down. Now, that doesn't mean everything's hunky-dory, because those wells are also supposed to be under, permits, and they have to be tested every certain number of years to make sure that they're working right. And there's a lot of things, because in theory, if it doesn't go down 8,000 feet, but only goes down a different amount, it could get into drinking the water table. But again, maybe you want to be on the environmental group and learn more about that. I do not know. Aaron.
Before I talk about my experience in real estate and how we could learn from real estate and relate to this.
Yes.
Manny mentioned that the well in Beverly Hills High School closed up. And I'm going to surmise or guess, maybe because they're all high school students. And maybe there was a study done over there.
Okay.
Possibly, I don't know.
I'll answer.
But he mentioned something
Okay.
about it. But so rent stabilization charges me X amount of dollars every single year for every unit that I have, or the tenants, right? And and I can pass on 50% to the tenants. Anyways, the point is, they inspect my building or any building I have in LA.
Oh.
But let me tell you how strict they are. They come into my own unit that I live in, and the tenants who live upstairs,
Yep.
and they see, does the carbon monoxide detector work? Is the battery broken? Is it connected?
Exactly.
Is it smoke detector? Is it low flow toilet or shower heads?
Is there a permit on the water
Is there
heater?
screens missing? Anything, any kind of violation you can imagine.
I live in one. I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you don't know how fast they're on top of me
Oh.
that I have to fix anything.
Right.
Of course, and I'm proactive and I take
So
care.
you notice the irony.
Right. No, thank you. The
Right.
irony that I just got a call today at 4:00 from Beverly Hills, building and safety or zoning, saying that a tenant made a complaint. I'm remodeling the building, 337 North Oakhurst. Took me about 9 months to get permits, go through architectural review, blah, blah, blah.
I know.
Oh, the complaint was, I'm almost finished remodeling and somebody's not happy with the way it looks compared to everything else in the community. And they want to come by tomorrow.
A person just told me that Beverly Hills, they had to paint the window frames because it didn't match the black that it was supposed to be. Yes.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Aaron, you pointed out a huge right. No, if the city wanted to, they have to. This is what Aaron's pointing out. If the city had wanted to, they could be checking these things as carefully. Right? How many rent controlled apartments are there in the city?
Thousands.
Thousands.
And thousands.
There are only, basically like 7 main drill sites that we're talking about that really need it. I mean, there are more than that, but there are 7 drill sites that are in close proximity to people that really could use this constant oversight. The city wanted to. You nailed it. They could do it. Can I move on to another question, though?
Well, I could have one of my workers do a study on the effects of oil drilling within a X amount of feet from the site and how it affects the community, just like Eric Rakovich,
Right.
or the 3 Mile, remember the nuclear
That would be incredible.
facility? So I could have, his name is Moshe Leader. Leader's, I'll have him do a study, and I'll report to you When my study comes
So
out.
let's talk about that. That would be part of the environmental group, right?
I'll do the study.
Okay, that's incredible. Wow, incredible. Anybody else? Another question. We already had, I know
It's not
you're
a
writing
question,
for
it's a
your
comment.
Jewish home. Any other questions though?
No, it's a comment.
Yes, Aaron.
Do we know how enforceable all of the violations?
Phenomenal question.
Retroactively now that it's changed hands?
Right, phenomenal question. So the first thing is that the new operators are bound to any existing agreements. It says very clearly in this that whoever the successor is, so that the first thing. Second of all, what are the, so what's going to happen is, and thank you, I forgot to mention this,
Yeah, and
because of the discovery of all these violations that the professor has found, and because of our complaints and the newspaper articles and the letter from Nays that showed how they're in violation of their law, of their agreement from 2001, the city has ordered a review. So there's going to be a review of this site. That's going to be a public review. There's going to be a public hearing where people can voice their opinions. Oh yes. We don't know when it's going to be, but it's in process. There's going to be a public hearing, and it doesn't mean that they're going to revoke their license so fast, but it means that now they're up for review. So again, that's why we need to be very smart now about the steps we take, because we really have the momentum and on the side of making the neighborhood healthier and safer. Okay, I'll do one more question, and then I want to divide up into groups, and then I'm happy to stick around and schmooze longer, but I promise we'd be done around 9 o'clock.
Flip the board back and talk about that number you have on there?
Oh yeah, thank you, honey. Okay, 1 second. We're going to take the question, and then we'll mention what this is all about. Get that in the frame of view there. Okay, yes.
This is, why don't you just say, let's just get that out of here?
Okay.
Let's close them down, because the truth is this, and I'll say this because you haven't talked about the obvious. The obvious is LA was built on oil wells. That was one of the first industries in Los Angeles.
Yes,
They
Doheny.
They have tremendous
He was an oil guy.
power. The reason why nothing's been done across the street and they're getting away with it is because of the oil money. And that's just the truth. And nobody really cares about Jews getting sick. So we're in a shul, so let's talk about a shmartam l'nafsho seichem, which is a halachic requirement.
Yes.
You have to watch your health, take care of your health.
Absolutely.
That is cancerous. That's black and white cancerous. There's a yeshiva across the street, there's a Chabad yeshiva here, there's a Hillel over there.
Schools
You've got
everywhere,
thousands
shuls
of Jews
everywhere.
Over here. That place needs to get shut down. And that's gotta be the goal. Because if you think you're gonna be able to enforce an agreement 10 years from now or 15 years from now,
not gonna happen.
it won't happen.
No,
It
that's
will
shut
not
down.
happen. So to go for a little thing where they're gonna play games with you down the road, is no, you don't have the money or the time or the ability. This agreement that happened in 2005, I don't even know if it's enforceable. People have been sitting on their rights for so many years. I don't know what the legal status of that agreement is. The only thing that really works is close it down. And that should be your start-off position. Anything else is going from weakness.
So I was asked by the LA Times if I supported the push for annual inspections. And I said, if I support annual inspections, I'm conceding to let it be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that.
That's right. And we need to have a citywide thing where anytime you've got something like this in a neighborhood where there are people, they gotta close it down.
Right.
And we need to get it aligned with poor Latinos.
So
and poor black people, because that's where you've got these oil wells.
I neglected one group. Stand LA is a coalition which is mostly in those poor communities. We're the only shul, Pico Shul is the only shul part of that coalition that's outside of the poor Latino communities that are most heavily impacted. Stand LA has been working for 2 years to try to get, their idea was, we're not going to argue for a ban. We're going to argue for what the scientists say is a buffer zone. Okay? So, which is in effect a ban.
Right.
Okay? But the word ban is a little bit more severe than saying, no, we just want to make a buffer zone. If it's within 2,500 feet of a community, it shouldn't be there. So Stand LA, that's their position. That's the 2,500 foot barrier. That's the motion that's been put in front of the city council now.